You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin Ni Chleirigh.
And me, Paul Brophy.
So, Paul, what are we chatting about tonight? This is your area, which I know absolutely nothing about. A bit like golf, which you're passionate about.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so, Paul, what are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, we're talking about something that has kind of pretty much fired the starting whistle on the next general election here in Ireland. It's the electoral boundary commission report on the electoral areas for the Dáil. Every 5 years, um, these constituencies are looked at and reviewed to take into account growing population. And so, according to our constitution, we must have one TD for every 30,000 people, and we can elect our TDs through five-seaters, three-seaters, and four-seater constituencies. Now, the report um, recommends that. Now, whether people agree with it or not, is that we go from 160 TDs to 174. So that's an increase of 14 TDs at the next election.
Well,
And
Paul,
it
what
has
about who's going to pay for that? The taxpayers.
what taxpayer, yeah, you and me and all our listeners will be paying for that. Um, so the next stall, a government will need to hit the magic number of 87 to form a government. So there has been some constituencies have not been changed. Some have been changed to take into account changing in populations, and in some constituencies, county borders have been breached, which the Electoral Commission are told to avoid it where they possibly can, but it has happened in a couple of areas here, and as we'll go on throughout the program, they ain't happy about it because it's a huge um, loss of identity for people. So during the program, we're going to go through the various constituencies, see what the changes are, how that might affect the incumbents in the seats. And since with this report out now, all the political parties and independents did know the lie of the land. So that will very much determine their electoral strategy going forward.
And who
So
the
I think,
constituents are now then, if the boundaries have been moved and changed,
oh
they
yeah,
could have different constituents and also be elected in a different county compared to what they have been.
absolutely. There are politicians, TDs out there through the stroke of a pen have lost, large swathes of their base. And, they take Sean Sherlock, for example, um, his base, which would be Mallow in Cork East, has been moved into Cork North Central. So he's saying his two options now are either run in Cork North Central or not run at all. So what does the old saying say? The pen is mightier than the sword. So
And some people could be, for instance, Mary Hilda Kavanagh,
mm,
who's the Kilkenny County Councillor, should be now being elected in Tipperary.
well, it doesn't affect county council electoral areas,
Or
but
does it not?
Mary, no, it doesn't. Mary Hilda Kavanagh, for Dáil voting purposes, she'll be now going into the new constituency of North Tipperary, which we'll touch on throughout the program, which is
Huh.
uh,
So will I
it's
start
certainly
sharing?
controversial. Yeah, I think the first constituency we have is Carlow Kilkenny, which is where we're both from.
But
Roisin?
bear in mind, Paul, that my IT skills are not.
Yeah.
So this is Cardiff Kilkenny. So Paul,
Yeah,
talk us through this.
yeah, Carlow Kilkenny. It's the two counties have been together as one constituency since 1948, so that's going back a long way. It's a five-seater. There were talks that the constituency could be split into two separate constituencies. So Carlow being become a three-seater, Kilkenny being a three-seater. That was looked at by the Electoral Commission, but it was felt that the population in Carlow didn't wasn't enough to make up one constituency. So the constituency is going to remain together, two counties, but most controversially, as our listeners can see there in the left top left hand corner, that little area of northwest Kilkenny, which would have the likes of Galmoy, Johnstown, Freshford, Tullaroan, that is now being moved into a new uh, constituency that's been created, North Tipperary. So that has created a lot of consternation, particularly amongst the people living there, because their loss of identity. So uh, you're living in Freshford, but you'll be voting for candidates in North Tipperary, which makes absolutely no sense. Um, uh, and people feel they've a loss of identity, and of course, there's a big rivalry between Kilkenny and Tipperary in hurling in particular. Now,
Yeah.
some people might look at that and say, "Ah, that's silly and all," but no, identity, it's something that we all have, and when you lose it, it's tough, So the people in Northwest Kilkenny, are genuinely feel very, very aggrieved. So at the moment, the current sitting TDs, it is two Fianna Fáil, one Fine Gael, one Sinn Féin, and one Green Party. So, as we all know, John Paul Phelan, the Fine Gael TD, he will not be running at the next election. So a new candidate will have to come forward for Fine Gael. Sinn Féin, had they ran a second candidate, they would have most certainly got that candidate elected, and so they'd be pushing for two seats at the next election. And then you also have John McGuinness, who would lose out, who would have lost a good chunk of his vote with that section of Northwest Kilkenny moving into the new constituency of North Tipperary. So he has to make up those votes elsewhere, which isn't an easy task. And you also have Jennifer Murnane O'Connor in Carlow, who she'd be reasonably happy with. Nothing has really changed for her. Carlow would be where she would draw the bulk of her vote, and the final current TD is Malcolm Noonan, who's the actual junior minister with responsibility for electoral reform. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes from there. But I suppose, Roisin, the big talking point there is that portion there in the top left hand corner now is now part of Tipperary. I was actually out in Urlingford and Freshford over the weekend, and I'm driving through and saying to myself, it makes absolutely no sense that the people living out here are going to have to vote in Tipperary. So be interesting to see what the turnout will be in that area. If it breaks 30%, be doing very, very well. And be interesting to see, will the politicians in North Tipperary actually canvass it?
And as you know, Paul, for international viewers, Ireland is very parochial
Very.
and parish pump and very
Yep.
parochial and very territorial. And
Oh, yeah.
especially with the GAA and
Yeah.
the hurling and the Gaelic football and the camogie, everything's all
Mm-hmm.
about counties and County
Yeah.
Kilkenny and Tipperary, and the rivalry between each neighbouring county is
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
rife.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's going to be very interesting. But I know a couple of TDs in Carlow Kilkenny have come out and said that if the people of living in Northwest Kilkenny, if they come to them with issues, they'll be treated exactly the same as anybody else, which is only right.
And so it only affects the national politicians, the national vote
Yeah,
with the TDs. It doesn't affect county councillors.
doesn't have affected at all. So effectively, people in Urlingford, Johnstown, Freshford, any local issues, they can talk to their local councillors like Mary Hilda Kavanagh, who's the councillor in that area. But as regards the election for Dáil seats, they vote now in North Tipperary, which is bananas. But
Well, at
that's
least
what.
we know who we're voting for. Well, we don't.
Yeah,
Well, God,
exactly.
yeah. Well, that's another question. So I'm
Yeah,
going through alphabetical order. Am I right? So I'm sharing up
yeah.
another one now,
It's
which
as
is
alphabetical as we can. Cavan Monaghan, so that's still remains a five-seater. So you have the two counties, Cavan and Monaghan. So it's like when you have two counties together, it's very hard for, like, say, in Carlow Kilkenny, for example, it's very hard for a Carlow candidate to get a vote in Kilkenny, and vice versa. Same here. Two counties put together, and that little portion there that you're circling, that has been moved into Meath East, which has
Right.
become a four-seater, which we'll get to later on. So at the moment, it is current. You have two Fianna Fáil. Sorry, yeah, you have two Fianna Fáil TDs, two Sinn Féin, and one Fine Gael, Heather Humphreys. So
All
uh,
right.
if we're looking at that constituency, Sinn Féin will be pushing hard for a third seat. You'd also have maybe Aintu are actually polling quite strong in that constituency. We've had Padder Tobin on a few weeks back as well. So that will be a kind of constituency that they will be targeting as well. So um so I'd be bold. I'm going to be bold. I'm not going to give a prediction, but because it could come back to have egg on my face. But we'll we'll give you kind of like who could be in contention and who could be under pressure. So yeah, that will be a constituency where Sinn Féin will be looking to pick up another seat.
Right. So that's what you think in the next election, that
Yeah.
Sinn
Now,
Féin.
just for our listeners, I do not know the inner workings of all these constituencies. I'm just going on what I've kind of read and kind of my own kind of research and my own kind of thoughts as well. So I could be absolutely completely wrong in who I think who's under pressure and who could do well. But sure, like that's kind of half the fun, Roisin, isn't it?
Isn't it? That's the crack.
Uh,
You
yeah,
know, I think the thing I love about the elections is the tallies. You
yeah,
know, I love the tallies and being up there on election day
yeah.
and
They're
hearing everything coming in, and I
they're
love that.
they're an education, and I would say to people, if you get a chance to go up to the tallies, get a chance to have a look at the disputed votes, it would shock you, you know, as regards people said, how people, go out and vote.
Mm. I love being like, because you and I both, when we were members of the Labour Party, we
Mm.
tallied together, didn't we?
That's
We were
right. Yeah,
tallying
yeah,
partners. And
yeah,
then up on
yeah,
the radio, then we would be up there, and it was like I used to love being like one of the first in the morning and the
yeah,
last out. You know, when everybody was leaving, turning off the lights, because it was
yeah.
always exciting to the very last
Yeah,
minute.
something was always going to happen as well.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
Carlow Kilkenny being a five-seater, you know, you'd always have maybe one or two seats that that you're never too sure of. In the smaller constituency, they can be a bit more cut and dry, but in the bigger ones, there's always scope for a shock.
Right, so we'll go on to the third one, Paul, which is, I hope I got the right. No, no, I haven't. I'm going to go
You know, okay,
back. As everybody knows, I am very Dixie Blondie when it comes to the third one is Clare.
Claire.
I love
Um,
County Clare.
it is a very nice scene. I think you have Carlow Kilkenny up there on your screen.
Oh,
You
and I
can
got
bring that.
Clare constituency.
Yeah,
That's Clare.
that's Carlow Kilkenny.
Oh God, Paul, how much sharing? Hold on. Hold on. There comes in sharing, and this is it here. Have you got it now?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect.
Yeah. Clare, very, very nice part of the world, is one of the constituencies that there was absolutely no change. That hasn't gained any area. It hasn't lost any area. It has four TDs at the moment. It's one Fianna Fáil, one Fine Gael, and two independents. Now, Violet Lynn Rin, I think her name is. I could have pronounced her name wrong. She was a Sinn Féin TD. She's now gone independent. So it's going to be very interesting. Sinn Féin will probably win a seat there as well, as will Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. So more than likely, the last seat will be between herself and Michael McNamara, the current independent TD, who was also um, a former Labour TD as well from
Oh, was it?
2011
Yeah.
to 2016. So um, that's what I'm seeing anyways. If any of our viewers in Clare have any other insights, it'd be great because it's as I said, is one of the few constituencies that hasn't been affected, hasn't gained anything, hasn't lost anything.
I love County Clare.
Yeah, it's lovely. Lahinch,
Yeah.
nice spot.
I love the beach down there in Doonbeg. I love that. It's
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
lovely
yeah,
energy on that beach, whatever it is.
yeah.
It's lovely. I wonder who's the TD for that area. I just love
There's
the energy.
Yeah, Michael McNamara, who is an independent. You have Joe Carey of Fine Gael. You have is it Cathal Crowe of Fianna Fáil, and Violet Lynn Ryn or something like that.
Hmm.
I could have pronounced her name completely wrong. She was former Sinn Féin TD who subsequently became an independent.
Right. I just love the beach down there in Doonbeg.
Yeah, it's a
It's
nice
a
spot.
really
Yeah.
beautiful beach and I just love it. So right on the ocean, Doonbeg, right on the ocean.
Yeah.
So our next one, you keep chatting away while I try and get the
Yeah.
next one up, Paul. So if
It could be Dublin as a whole. I could
I
be
think it's Cork.
Cork. Okay. So as Cork and Dublin are the two biggest counties. They are split a couple of different ways. So, what our viewers will see when we see Cork, we will see all the five constituencies that are there. So you have Cork North Central and Cork South Central. They both gained a seat. So Cork's South Central, it has three cabinet ministers. It has Micheál Martin, Michael McGrath, and Simon Coveney. And of course, Sinn Féin topped the poll there the last election with Donncha O'Leary, who's their education spokesperson. So with an extra seat there and the vote Sinn Féin got at the last election, if they can hold it up, they will certainly be on course to win two seats there. Cork Cork East is still a four-seater, but I suppose the big change there is the area of Mallow, which would be kind of the core area for Sean Sherlock, who the Labour Party TD, their only TD in Cork, has been moved into Cork North Central, which has now become a five-seater. So, as I mentioned there at the top of the programme, um, Sean Sherlock basically has two choices now. He either goes with his base to Cork North Central, or he's as he said himself, he may not run at all. So he's most likely he will run in Cork North Central, and I think if his base holds up in Cork North Central, I think he will hold a seat in that new constituency. And you also have Cork North West. Um, has got a little bit bigger, but no real change there. Of course, Lynn Reid, the former Sinn Féin MEP and their presidential candidate in 2018, will be standing in that electorate area, so she will be, have be going hard to win a seat there. It's currently Fianna Fáil have two seats in that area with the two Moynihan's, Andreas and Michael Moynihan, and the third, and there's a Finn. I can't think of a Fine Gael person. It's Michael Creed, who actually isn't running at the next election, would you believe, former agriculture minister. And then you
Really?
have Cork, South West. Now, this is the constituency of Holly Kearns, who is the leader of the Social Democrats. She was It was a complete shock that she got elected here in
One vote, isn't it?
in the local elections in 2019. She got elected by one vote, and 9 months later she got elected to the Dáil. So just goes to show what one folk can do. She'd be a little bit disappointed that they didn't gain an extra seat, because three seaters can be difficult. And Cork South West is a very rural constituency, and Michael Collins, who the independent there, might be part of a new rural party. You don't know. Is most likely going to top the poll. That's pretty certain. And then you also have Christopher O'Sullivan, the Fianna Fáil TD, who's also a former boyfriend of Holly Kearns. So it could be a real dogfight between Christopher Sullivan, Tim Lombard, the Fine Gael senator, and Holly Kearns of the Social Democrats, their leader as well, for the last seat there. So that's a constituency that will be, very much uh, where people will be keeping an eye on. Of course, I'm sure it's a constituency Sinn Féin will hope to do well in, but I believe their candidate from the last time, Paul Hayes, has actually left the party. He's now gone independent, so it'll be up to a new candidate to emerge there.
Right, Paul, next one coming up. I'm not sure if this is the next one. Is this something, will I
That's
move on from this or will I keep
You
it
can
here?
move on from that. That just shows all
Move on.
the
Okay, so
43
you keep
constituencies that we
chatting
have.
while
Yeah,
I get that ready.
yeah.
So,
So
Paul, what do you think do you think there will be a lot of shocks in the next one or the next
um
election, especially with all this? Donegal,
well,
Paul, we're going to Donegal.
Donegal, a nice place. Of
And
course we
last week we actually had
had
Daniel
Danielle
from
Cloncrine
Buncrana on. So, it's
running
great that
down the
we
road from Derry.
just my neck of the woods. And I had Donegal there. There we are, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lovely Donegal. Now, it had been speculated that Donegal would be split into two, given the size of the county, but that's not going to happen. So Sinn Féin will be very disappointed because they thought they could get two in both those kind of split Donegal constituencies, but with is not the case. So at the moment, you have both Pierce Doherty and Pádraig McLaughlin. They're the two sitting Sinn Féin TDs. You have Charlie McConalogue, the current Minister for Agriculture, who uh, has been in the news there
Mm.
recently. And the farmers are not happy. Uh,
No, and neither is an awful lot of animal rights activists either. Not happy. And the
Absolutely.
Micra. Let's not forget Micra.
Oh yeah. And then you also have Joe McHugh, the Fine Gael, who is not running at the next election. He is retiring. And you have
Really?
Thomas Pringle, the independent TD. So a lot going on here. Of course, the Micah Action Group, they have registered. They're in the process of registering
Really?
as a political party. So they will be running candidates both in the local elections next year and in the Dáil elections. So there's a very, very strong possibility that uh, a Micro candidate could conceivably stop Sinn Féin from winning three seats here, which
Really? And
it's
Paul, do
quite
you know what
possible.
I'm curious about too? It seems to be
Yeah,
an awful lot of Fine Gael TDs are not running in the next election.
yeah. There's six that are currently sorry, there's six that are not going to run at the next election. I suppose when all these there were a lot, and there's probably more now. Probably considering it even stronger because now that they know the lay of the land. So yeah, and there's also talks of a rural party emerging, so which could, Fine Gael would be hit hard in that because
Hmm.
um
It's just
farm
interesting that
farming community
they're all
would be an
Fine
area where they
Gael.
would draw a lot of their vote. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
sorry.
just interesting. It's all Fine Gael who are announcing they're not
Mhm.
running in the next election.
Yeah, well, I suppose they've been in government since 2011, and the longer you stay in government, the more unpopular you can become.
And plus with the
So
leadership as well, and the, it's there's a lot of just
yeah, it'll be
disheartening.
very, very interesting to have their thinking
Mm.
um this Friday. So coming, so be interesting to see. I suppose the budget is going to be very important for both for all the three coalition parties. So they're trying to set their stall out to try win the next election. Okay, so this is taking Dublin as a whole, because Dublin being capital of Ireland, with population in excess of 1 million people, is split in about 10 different directions there. I suppose one of the biggest changes, Dublin Fingal has now been split into two. You have uh, Fingal East and West, so massive constituency, and it'll be interesting to see. You have Darragh O'Brien, the current Minister for Housing there. Where is he going to? Will he run in East or West? You have Louise O'Reilly of Sinn Féin. Of course, Sinn Féin will be looking to pick up a second seat, probably in the larger one of the two. Then of course you have Regina Doherty, who moved to Fingal. So it'll be interesting to see where she runs there. And then you have Joe O'Brien of the Green Party. Of course, the Green Party on current polls would be looking at losing a lot of seats. They currently have 12. They could be coming back with somewhere between 0 and maybe 3 on a good day at the next election. So, and of course you have Duncan Smith. The Labour Party overall wouldn't be overly happy with how these constituencies have been withdrawn for them in a way. So they will be. every kind of Labour candidate will be reliant, any particularly Labour TDs will be reliant on their personal constituency vote holding up there as well. And I suppose another constituency that has gained a seat is Dublin Rathdown. It's gained a lot of Cabinteely and Foxrock and, what we say, more affluent areas in Dublin. And currently, Fine Gael have two seats there with Josepha Madigan and Neil Richmond, who are both junior ministers, and of course the current Green Party deputy leader and minister for media, arts, sport, Catherine Martin. So she'll be very pleased that the constituency has gained another seat, and it will probably help our chances of being re-elected and Fine Gael's chances of holding the two. So that fourth seat, could Sinn Féin win a seat there? Could Fianna Fáil finally get a seat back in their area, which they haven't had since the late Seamus Brennan? So that'll be an interesting one there. Some of the other constituencies, of course, Dublin West, which is the constituency of the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, that's gained the seat. So that would have helped Roderick O'Gorman, his coalition and ministerial colleague there, because if it was
So
kept
Roderick O'Gorman and Leo Varadkar are from Dublin West.
Dublin West, yeah,
The two of them.
gained. Yeah, that's
Do you
gained.
see either one of them getting re-elected?
I would say Leo Varadkar should get re-elected. Jack Chambers, the other TD, should get elected. Paul Donnelly, the Sinn Féin TD, should get re-elected. Sinn Féin will actually be probably pushing and looking for two. And then the last seat could be a ding-dong between maybe an independent, Roderick O'Gorman, and maybe Ruth Coppinger could make a comeback, former
Oh, I
TD
don't
of the
know. I don't think she's very
Socialist
popular.
People. Yeah.
I don't think she's popular. Roderick
Now she
O'Gorman's
might
not popular.
go. Now she
And
mightn't
neither's
even run.
Leo.
No, nobody knows. But look, I suppose the difference here in Dublin
They're
is
going to lose
there.
a lot of the women's votes.
Mm,
They are, and Ruth Coppinger will as well. And Roger O'Gorman and Leo, they're going to lose a lot of the women's votes.
yeah,
So
and
that's yeah.
Leo Varadkar will more than likely have Emer Curry, who's Fine Gael senator. Of course, her dad was former SDLP and Fine Gael TD Austin Curry, who ran for the presidency in 1990. She'll most likely be part of Leo Varadkar's ticket. So
That's
in
going to be
Dublin,
interesting to keep an eye on in the next
yeah,
election.
absolutely.
Because they're key players in
Oh
where
yeah,
an awful lot of women's votes are going to be
yeah.
questioned.
Well, generally, the general rule of thumb is if you want to lead the next government, if you win Dublin, you're you're in a good position. So it'd be interesting to see who will come out the biggest party in Dublin.
Yeah, okay. That's the way it works, is it?
Yeah.
Perfect. And where do we go next, Paul?
I think we could be heading west to Galway.
Alrighty, just bear with me. You keep talking while I'm setting this up.
Of course, Galway is a very nice place too as well.
Yep, Galway East, Paul, we're heading to. And
Galway.
yeah, and just give me a couple of seconds. You keep talking while I'm doing this.
Yeah, Galway East has gained a seat. Of course, this was the constituency of the former of current president and former Labour TD, Michael D. Higgins. And there's also, if you look at that kind of pink strip there, I think a bit of that has moved on. I'm not 100% sure where that pink area is moving to. I can't really see it that great, but
Let me have a look if I can make it bigger. Very blurry, isn't it?
Yeah, but that pink area and those electoral areas have moved. I think they have moved into Galway Roscommon. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's an extra. There's an extra seat added there. You currently have Kieran Cannon of Fine Gael. You have Anne Rabbitte of Fianna Fáil, current Junior Minister for Disability, and Sean Canny, the independent. So an extra seat there that will most likely be an area that Sinn Féin will be targeting, and they have a candidate. He's a fairly young fella. His name is Lewis O'Hara, and from what I've seen on social media, he's going at it hard. So that definitely is a constituency that Galway East that Sinn Féin would be targeting. It'd be kind of a constituency that we traditionally be, a bit more left. So you don't know. There could be either a left-leaning independent or maybe someone from the Social Democrats. They could do well too as well there. So be interested to see.
It's also going to be interesting to see, Paul, just while I get the next one up while we're chatting,
Mhm.
that there is no political compass anymore. There's no left and there's no right, and I
No.
think the political compass has changed
Mm.
in the last, say, couple of years. People
Right.
who might have been left might have been. It's going to be really interesting to see the political landscape of what the compass is politically, because it used to be just it was a line. You had left, you had right, you
Yeah.
had far
Yeah.
left, you had far right. It's all completely mishmash now,
Oh
because
yeah. Yeah.
you've no
Absolutely.
left or right.
And it all depends on the particular topic or issue at the time. Like you might have one view on taxation. You might think, yeah, we should have higher taxes. That's probably classed as a left wing thing. Or you might have another view on another issue and you go, well, that's right. So, this whole left and right thing, it's a lot more, it's not as straight down the middle as it was before. It's
No.
become a bit blurred, I suppose. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the way the world is going. Galway Roscommon, the little bit there in the pink in the north, that's a part of South Mayo, which is now gone back into Mayo, which Michael Ring is absolutely delighted about. And we'll talk about that more when we come to Mayo. Galway Roscommon is currently a three-seater. It will stay a three-seater. You currently have Claire Curran of Sinn Féin. You have two independents as well. You have Michael Fitzmaurice, who's one of these people that's been talked about being part of a rural uh, party. So it'll be interesting to see how
It will
that
be
develops.
interesting. Yeah.
And then you have Dennis Naughton, the former Fine Gael TD, who became an independent. He's not running at the next election, so
Right.
that's
Another one.
that is going to be interesting to see. So there's a Fine Gael Senator Aisling Dolan. She will probably be looking to see could she make the breakthrough there, because a lot of the likes of Dennis Naughton, he would have picked up, even though he's an independent, he would have been picking up a lot of what would be, say, traditional Fine Gael votes in that constituency. So she'd be kind of hopeful that she could make the breakthrough. But that could be a constituency where uh, another rural independent or could, make a breakthrough.
Right. So it's going to be interesting. See, not so many people now are just announcing that they're not running again, Paul.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and this rural party, can you wait? Just talk about that while I'm getting the next
yeah.
constituency up.
It's been talked about that there's the next the next local elections, that there will be a rural party or a rural grouping, to represent rural Ireland. Because as you can see between what's happening with, you know, in Brussels, what Charlie McConalogue has come back, and they're not particularly happy with the Green Party, which
No one is, Paul.
no one is. They're
No
on
one is.
they're on what, 2 or 3% for a reason, I would guess.
They're in La
Um,
La Land. Don't get me started. Move swiftly on.
Yeah, move swiftly on. Exactly. So yeah, there are talks of a rural, party emerging, but with the with the standards and public office rules, and trying to get a new political party up and running, it's very, very difficult.
Why is that, Paul?
Unfortunately, Roisin, I think the system is rigged in favour of the bigger parties.
What do you
Because
mean rig, Paul? What do you mean rig? Be more specific. That's a
it,
very ambiguous comment before we get emails in. What do you
yeah,
say it's rigged?
particularly around fundraising and stuff like that, like political parties to organise in a constituency, it's a lot of work and it can cost a lot of money. Like
Yeah.
even to print a flyer, Roisin, that's not cheap. To put posters, to put ads in papers, to run very, very good social media campaigns, that costs money. And so your ability to fundraise is so important. And of course, with the standards on public, there's limits on what individuals and groups can give, which I think is a good thing, because if there was no limits, it'd be an absolute free for all. And you like whoever is making a contribution, they're not doing towards a political party or a candidate. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their health. If you make a contribution to a party or an individual, you are going to look for something back in return uh, down the line. Now, I'm not saying anything is corrupt or uh, or dodgy or anything like that,
But
but
Paul, if I can make a contribution to a animal sanctuary,
yeah,
like I'm not going to look for anything back.
mm,
So it
true.
is, but like a lot of corruption out there. Oh, I made a
Mm,
donation, so you have to give me something back. If I gave
mm,
a donation to an animal sanctuary for Hilltop Animal Sanctuary down there in County Clare, amazing.
yeah,
If anybody's listening, if you'd like
yeah,
to donate to Hilltop Animal Sanctuary in County Clare, please do. But
mm,
I'm not going to look for anything back from Katrina for
yeah.
giving for making a donation. So it
That's
just
true.
goes to show you the crookedness and corruption within politics now.
Yep, very,
Mm.
very, very much so.
So, Paul,
Um,
Galway West.
Galway West, it's a five. That is a five-seater. That little bit there in yellow, that has moved. I think it has moved into. It may have moved into Roscommon Galway. I'm not. Yeah, it's Roscommon Galway that has moved into. It's five-seater. You currently have him. Oh, say Eamon De Valera. Eamon O'Keefe, who of course is grandson of Eamon De Valera.
I'll mention his
You
name,
ha-
my grandmother might turn in her grave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My great grandfather would be the same. Um, uh, you also have Hildegard Naughton, the current junior minister. You have uh, Keir Mairead Farrell of Sinn Féin, and you have Catherine Connolly, and you have Noel Greenish, two independents. So uh, from what I'm looking at it, I think one of the independents could get squeezed, could be Catherine Connolly. So, so the likes of Sinn Féin would be that would be a seat that they would be targeting as well. But Catherine Connolly, she's a current Crown Corla, so she'd have a strong she'd have a strong vote there too. So I wouldn't
She
rule her
would
out
have, Paul,
completely.
because she's
But
very well
mm,
respected even within the door, isn't she?
oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
She's an excellent TD.
she's very well respected. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So I wouldn't. I'd say she
I don't know
personally.
anything about her. I just know that
I
she's
think she'll be.
respected.
I think she'll be. I think she'll be okay. Okay, she might be under a bit of pressure, but I think she'll be okay. No, Grealish, the other independent, he might be. But I think if I was to call it, one of the independents are going to lose their seat there.
Perfect. Okay, so are you finished with this one, or
Yeah,
will I go on? You keep
we'll
chatting away
move
there, Paul, where I
along.
get the next one up.
Yeah. So for our listeners, there was 39 constituencies. They now increased it to 43. So there's going to be some span new constituencies at the next Dáil election. So which we will get to. Kerry, another nice place. Another one of the five-seater. There was talks that the constituency would be split into north and south, but that didn't happen. So it's going to retain its uh, five-seater status. But as you can see, to cover it, it's massive. So like I know from say from Listowel to Carrick, that's about 70 kilometers. So you can imagine what it's like to go from one point to another. So, of course, Kerry is the home of the Healy Rays, and Danny and Michael Healy Ray, so they would be pretty secure there. And they'll probably, well, yeah, they probably will maybe run a third to see what they can do, because Brendan Griffin, the Fine Gael TD, he is not running at the next election, so that could be a seat that the Healy Ray organisation could target. You also have Norma Foley, the current Minister for Education, she's there as well, and then you have Pa Daly, who's the Sinn Féin TD from Kerry there as well. So I don't know. I think might go out on a limb here and say I think Healy Raes to get 3 out of 5. I think.
Norma Foley, Paul. What
Mm,
do you think? What do you think?
I would say she'll struggle, but she probably get the last seat.
I don't know with all this educational thing and what's going on with indoctrination.
Yeah,
I don't know, Paul. A lot of parents are very, very unhappy.
yeah,
Um,
very true,
they're
very
not
true. And
happy with
then
the.
of course, could Sean Kelly, the MEP and former president of the GAA, come back from Brussels and run for Fine Gael in Kerry? You know, he'd be a very, very strong candidate, but I don't know is that on his radar. But yeah, I think uh, uh,
I don't know. I don't
Healy
think.
Ra-
I
Healy
think
Ra- Healy raised for 3 seats might be a bad shout.
possibly, Paul.
Yeah,
Possibly. You
and
know, yeah,
it
possibly.
would be the most likely person they would run would be Maura Healy, uh, who would be Danny's daughter, if I was to uh, make a guess. But yeah, I think 3 Healy Rays is not beyond it.
Push Norma Foley out the window.
Yeah, why not? Anything is possible.
Okay, we'll watch this space.
Yeah,
Okay, so Paul, you keep chatting till I get the next one up
yeah.
because, yep.
I like a lot. We're just, as I said earlier on, I don't know all the ins and outs of all these constituencies. We're just looking at them and kind of seeing what could potentially happen, which is kind of half the fun. It'll be interesting to look back at this in a couple of years' time and see how wrong or right we were. North Kildare is actually gained a seat. It's going to go from a 4-seater to a 5-seater. Um, at the moment you have Bernard Dorkin, who's the longest serving Fine Gael TD. At the moment, both him and Richard Bruton were elected at the same time. Of course, Richard Bruton he's not running at the next
No.
election.
And another
Um,
Fine Gael TD.
now it'll be interesting to see what Bernard Dorkin does now. Will he stay or will he go? But maybe the fact that there's an extra seat there that might he might be more inclined to run. You also have uh there's a Fianna Fáil TD as well. I cannot think of his name. It has escaped me.
It'll come back. It'll come to you in
I
a
can
minute,
pick I can
Paul.
pick I can picture him with glasses.
Well,
There's
Paul,
also
you know what? That happens to me all the time, as you know.
yeah,
And if you
there's
can't figure it out, I can't figure it out because
there's
you're the one helping
there's
me out.
re- there's Rita Cronin of Sinn Féin, and there's also the Social Democrats, Catherine Murphy, who's been that representing that constituency for oh a long well since 2005, which is what 18 years. So I did see some kind of analysis that Social Democrats might win 2 seats there. I'm not 100% sure there. The Sinn Féin vote was up in 2020 from the previous election, but it wasn't exactly stellar. So, Fianna Fáil may fancy their chances of getting a second seat there, but I'm not 100% sure. Of course, North Kildare and South Kildare, which you'll see in a minute, are two very, very different places. North Kildare, you're in Naas, you're closer to Dublin, whereas South Kildare is kind of a bit more rural. So they're different constituencies and have kind of like a slightly different demographic. So to be honest, it's hard to know how that constituency is going to fall. Sinn Féin would look to try get a second seat there, being a 5-seater. But it's not all that certain that they would get it.
Now, not knowing Kildare the way Kildare is, I say that might be a wee bit tough for Sinn Féin. But there again, Sinn Féin, it's like a lot of people are saying, Sinn Féin are not left anymore. There's a what is it, a cigarette paper difference between Sinn Féin, Fine Gael, and Fianna Fáil now. You know,
Yeah,
you know. So my issue is, will Sinn Féin, which was considered left the same way Labour was, have they made the same mistake, gone for the middle class and forgot about the working class? Have they sort of lost their grassroots? This will all come up in the next election.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Have they gone down the same road as Labour? And is their policies. And then when they get to the with Sinn Féin, when they get into government, which is a foregone conclusion that they will get into government, when old Mother Hubbard goes to the cupboard is bare, the money will be gone, and they won't be able to deliver.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that could very, very, very well happen.
You know, so it's just Sinn Féin vote. It depends on what their core voters. If the core voters will say, God, you know.
And the election itself, if the government lasts the full term, the latest it can be held is March 2025. But most people would think that it's going to be held before that. So if I was to take a guess, I think it would be after the local elections when the next election will be called.
When do you think it will be called then, Paul?
I think it'll be after the budget next year.
After the budget?
Yeah.
The budget this year or next year?
The budget next year, which would be next October. So
do you think it'll last that long?
Yeah, no, you don't know. Something could crop up, and I suppose it all depends how the local and European elections go, because they can effectively be a referendum on the government. Now, local elections are different to general elections in the sense that it's very, very much local, very parochial. You're voting for individuals more so than party. Yeah, exactly. So, how Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Greens do at the next local elections, will probably determine if they do okay. They might say, right, we'll keep going till maybe we might push it out to March 2025 if they go kind of badly. They might think, well, I don't know, but
you think can they, because I don't know, you know, can they call a general election before the local election? Can they call it in the general election anytime?
Of course they can.
Can they? Paul, do you see it lasting until then? Do you see, in all honesty, could this be just now, okay, everybody's getting into general election and canvassing mode now that they have this new...
The one thing that the government probably have in their favour is that at the moment the tax receipts are quite good, and they have funds and finance to let's say throw money at the problem. Because we're seeing farmers.
They're throwing money at the wrong problems. They're throwing money at other things instead of the real things. I mean, there's money, the waiting list, the healthcare. It depends on where they throw the money, Paul, because the ordinary general Joe Soap and are not happy at the parish pump around the country in local communities.
Yeah. I think
can they last until another year?
Yeah, well, I suppose they'll be hoping so. But look, as Albert Reynolds says, it's the little things that could trip you up. Something could come along.
I wish your Father Brendan Smith tripped him up, didn't he?
Yeah, very much so.
So, Paul, Kildare South.
Kildare South.
No, we haven't.
No, Kildare South is it's down as a 4-seater, but it's really a 3-seater because Sean O'Farrell, it was the Count Corla, he is automatically re-elected. So that has become a 3-seater. So a 3-seater will mean a higher quota for candidates to be elected. So at the moment, you have Martin Hayden, who's the Junior Minister for Fine Gael for Agriculture. You have Cathal Berry, the Independent, and you also have, who was the third? Patricia Ryan of Sinn Féin. If you look at the map there on your left, that area of Port Arlington, where which would be Cathal Berry's core base. That has now moved into Laois, so that is a big blow to him there. You have
Really?
a good chunk of your electorate moving into another county. So does he follow his base and try his chances in Laois, or does he stay where he is?
He's popular in Laois because he'll get the Defence Force votes. He'll get the
Yeah,
Defence Force
the
votes and he'll get the Defence Force families votes.
that will be key for him.
Yeah.
With regards to retaining. If he can hold the Defence Force vote, he should be okay.
The Defence
If
Forces are usually loyal.
if it was to sway a little bit, he could be under pressure, and then that could you could. Does that mean Sinn Féin might have a chance at a seat? Does Mark Wall, the Labour Party senator,
No,
have
I
a
don't
chance
think
at a
Mark
seat?
Wall will.
Of course, his dad was a Labour TD there for a number of years, and the other there's Fiona O'Loughlin, the Fianna Fáil senator as well. So it's with Sean O'Friel not running, she'd be hoping that his voters would kind of
There's a lot of niche
lend her that vote. But whether
families.
that will happen, I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's a lot of Laois families too in the Defence Forces. So there you've got the Curragh, you've got the Third Infantry Battalion.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think you've got a lot of core when you think of the Defence Force family members
yeah,
and families. So I would say, and you know what, the Defence Forces are loyal. They will vote
yeah.
for him, and they'll tell everybody they're quite loyal. They
Oh
are,
yeah, yeah.
you know, not quite. They are loyal.
Like
Anyway,
he
Paul,
kind
go
of,
on.
for one, for another, he came from nowhere. Well, might say that might be a bit harsh to say he came from nowhere, but he came and he got elected, and that Defence Force vote was very very important to him. So,
When I say
you
he
know,
came from nowhere, Paul, he was in the Army Ranger Wing.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
He's a doctor and he was in the Army Ranger Wing. Um, so I wouldn't say he came from nowhere.
Mm.
He'd be well known within,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
people would
So,
be very loyal to the fact he was in
yeah.
the Army Ranger Wing,
So,
and so the all the Defence Forces will be very loyal, and they look
yeah.
up to any member of the wing as well.
Yeah. If the Defence Force vote holds up, he'll be re-elected.
Yeah. We're on to the next one, Paul.
Yeah, I
Right,
think
you
it's.
keep chatting again while I
I
get this
think I
ready.
think we're heading for Limerick.
Okay, great.
Oh, the All Ireland
Leash,
hurling
leash,
champions. Oh,
leash,
Laois, sorry.
leash, and then
Laois is
Limerick.
Laois is a new constituency. Because it was Laois and Offaly were together as one constituency, a five-seater, but it's been decided now that the population there in Laois is big enough to sustain its own constituency, which would be a three-seater, which would kind of suit the current TDs there at the moment, because there you have three Laois TDs. You have Charlie Flanagan, Sean Fleming, and uh, oh man, Stanley. Uh, I can't think of his name. His name escapes. Brian Stanley. Sorry, I beg your pardon. He's current chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Uh, they'd be very happy with that, and I suppose Port Arlington has also moved from Kildare South into Laois there as well. So, with the fact that Laois is going to become one constituency, Charlie Flanagan will most likely run at the next election, and I would firmly expect Brian Stanley, Sean Fleming, and Charlie Flanagan to be re-elected in that three
Fine
seat
Gael
constituency.
needs someone with common sense, strong leadership, and who have the experience, knowledge, and wisdom that
Oh
they
yeah,
really need, because too many people are leaving. And Charlie
yeah,
he probably is he keep that
yeah,
steadfastness and that trust.
yeah. As I said
I
there,
don't know. I've never met him, but I'm just thinking, Fine
the
Gael,
fact
everyone's leaving.
the fact that Lee is now
Why?
one constituency, I'd be pretty confident he'll run at the next election,
Yeah.
and he'll retain the seat along with Sean Fleming and Brian Stanley. So that for what it's worth is fairly cut and dry.
Okay, okay. And on to the next one, Paul, which is
Yeah,
Limerick. You keep chatting while I get that up.
yeah,
There we
I think
go.
it's either Limerick City or Limerick County. That's Limerick. It's Limerick City. Now this little bit here in yellow, that has now been transferred into North Tipperary, which Alan Kelly will be very happy with. So a lot of Bird Hill, Newport, Newport in particular, because the only Labour county councillor that they have in Tipperary, Fiona Bonfield, is from that area. So Alan Kelly would be pleased that that area is now in North Tip, and he'd be
He's very
hoping that
quiet of late, isn't he?
he is. Um, and Limerick City, then Limerick City, massive constituency. You have Brian Lennon of Green Party. I would say most likely going to lose a seat. You have Kieran O'Donnell of Fine Gael. He's a junior minister. You have Maurice Quinlivan of Sinn Féin, and you have Willie O'Dea of Fianna Fáil. So
Well,
Willie
he'll get
O'Dea
re-elected.
he'll certainly get re-elected.
And he'll get the women's vote as well. Willie,
Maurice
he'll get the women's
Quinlivan will
vote.
get re-elected. So there's a seat there in the offing for someone. Could Sinn Féin win two? Could the Social Democrats? It may be a constituency they might target. They have a councillor there, Eilish O'Donovan. She's been kind of mentioned. So, so it's the last seat there is very much up for grabs.
Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting this next election,
Yeah,
Paul.
there'll be a lot, like a lot of them, Roisin. You could predict, in a constituency there'd be maybe two or three. You'd say, yeah, definitely. Then there's always one or two that could. It all depends on the day, if the tide is with you, the tide is with you. If it's out, it's out.
Or is it a
That,
foregone conclusion, Paul, that Sinn Féin have just made a deal with the last election that they would win this election?
I think this is County Limerick.
Yes.
No real change, no change there at all. You have Niall Collins of Fianna Fáil, Junior Minister. You have Patrick O'Donovan, Fine Gael Junior Minister, and you have Richie O'Donoghue of the Independent there as well. I suppose Sinn Féin will be trying to knock Richard Donoghue off, but I think he could be a hard man to beat. And I think he'll retain his seat. But Niall Collins could be under pressure there.
Okay, so we're on Longford Westmeath now.
Longford Westmeath has gone from a 4-seater to a 5-seater, which would be music to the ears of kind of the rural independents to Michael Carley, the Fine Gael senator from that area. Sinn Féin will be looking to win a second seat. Fianna Fáil, they have 2 seats there at the moment. Can they retain them? That is the $64,000 question. And a little bit there in red has gone into Meath East. So it could be, I'd say that Kevin Moran, the former Kevin the Boxer Moran, the former independent, and he was former junior minister, mightn't be a bad shout to get a seat back there.
Okay, so we're on to County Louth, Paul.
County Louth, the little bit there in yellow has been moved into Meath West. Now, Louth is still a 5-seater, which is interesting because you have both Drogheda and you have both Dundalk in the one constituency, which are two of the biggest, fastest growing towns in Ireland, with a population of 80,000 between them. But it's still a 5-seater. You have Rory O'Morcu and Imelda Munster of Sinn Féin. You have Jed Nash of the Labour Party. You have Fergus O'Dowd of Fine Gael. Now, interesting to see, will he run? Will he not run? I think he will run. And you have Fitzpatrick. I can't think of his first name. He's an independent former Fine Gael TD. He was chairman of the Louth County Board, and they pushed very, very hard to get a new stadium built. And they were able to secure 14 million in outside finance from that in Immigrant Investor Fund, and the GAS said not to proceed, and he has resigned as Peter Fitzpatrick. He's resigned as chairman of the Louth County Board. So that stadium not going ahead was a big blow to him, because I'd say he kind of built his whole election hopes on that. So Sinn Féin winning 3 seats there is a real possibility.
So we're away
Um,
overnight at County Mayo on the west of
County
Ireland.
Mayo, former Taoiseach Enda Kenny. Michael Ring was absolutely delighted when that bit of South Mayo part there in yellow, sorry, in pink, which was transferred back from Galway Roscommon. So that now becomes a five-seater. So there's an extra seat to play. It was interesting. Only a couple of days before this was announced, Lisa Chambers, the former Mayo Fianna Fáil TD and current senator, said she was interested in running for Europe. So I think the fact that it's now a five-seater, that might change that. So Michael Ring, Alan Dillon, they'd be happy with that, hoping that Fine Gael can retain the two seats. Sinn Féin had a good vote there with Mary Rose Conway. They'll be hoping to push for a second seat, and then you have Derek Leary, the junior minister. Both him and his dad before him were TDs for Mayo, so be pretty confident he get re-elected. So there is a seat there at play. So it probably be a ding dong between um Lisa Chambers and Sinn Féin for that last seat.
And it was in County Mayo, Paul, just for giving some useless information to the viewers, that was where my son made his first steps on his first
Wow,
birthday, was in County Mayo. Yeah.
very good.
So, and I thought I had shared, but I didn't. There we go.
Um, Trying to work out is that
Meath East.
Mead East? No, no real. It has lost a bit of ground into Longford Westmeath. So three-seat constituency. You have Johnny Gork of Sinn Féin. You have Pader Tobin of Aon2. So interesting battle there. You know, I think Pader Tobin should retain
Yeah,
his
I
seat
think so
there.
too. He's a
Yeah.
long-standing politician. I mean, he's been a
Yeah.
politician for how long? He's the loyal voter base.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
loyal
yeah.
voter base. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fair, he increased his vote. He even though he was running for a new party at the last election. So you have one Sinn Féin, one Aon2, one Fine Gael. I don't see any change there the next election.
So now we have up on the screen Meath West.
Mead West has gained an extra seat, and I wonder, is Regina Doherty kicking herself? Because it's gone from a three-seater to a four-seater.
Oh, I say there'll be I do not see how the Minister of Justice will retain her seat.
Yeah, it could actually, that could be a big scalp. Could be a very big scalp there. You also have, Darren O'Rourke or Sinn Féin there. You know, it'll be a constituency like they'll target for an extra seat. You also have was Thomas Byrne, the Fianna Fáil junior minister. So and you also have Sharon Keoghan, the current independent senator in the Shannon, who's from that constituency as well.
Was
So
she,
with an
Paul?
extra,
Right.
yeah, with an extra seat there, anything's possible.
And she's very, very vocal at the moment, and she's very popular within with a lot of
Yeah,
people in
oh yeah.
her in speaking
Whether
out.
whether you agree or disagree with her, she's not afraid to speak her mind,
Mm. And
which is
that's what
good.
we need. We need that people going back to not being afraid to speak their minds.
With that.
You know, not just doing what the power brokers of A and B, C are telling the politicians to do, but the politicians just not being afraid to speak their own minds. And we need that. We need that back again.
Yeah, Offaly. So as I said, Leith and Offaly were together as one constituency, and now they're being split into two constituencies. So Offaly now is a three-seater. A little bit of Port Arlington has gone in as well to bring up the overall population of the constituency, so it can have the three seats. You have Barry Cowan of Fianna Fáil, pretty certain, nailed on that he'll get re-elected. You have Carol Nolan as well, independent, former Sinn Féin TD. I think she's going to hold her seat. And then there's the last seat there in Offaly is completely up for grabs. Sinn Féin could get a second. Sinn Féin could, sorry, win a seat there. You could have another independent. You could have Fine Gael, but you know, I'd say two out of three I could call the last seat very, very much up to grabs. And then again, like a lot of, even when a general election is called, there are local kind of elections within a national election, and issues can arise in particular areas, and a candidate might take a particular position, and that could be the difference between getting elected and not getting elected. So, as to say, it's be interesting to see how it fares out. Then we have Sligo Leitrim. Frank Fionn, the Fine Gael TD. There's a portion of his that bit there in yellow that has transferred into Galway Roscommon, where I think he lost about maybe 1,000 votes there with a stroke of a pen, which is incredible. So he has to ask himself, does he follow his base, or does he, take his chances and run there in Sligo Leitrim? And of course you have Mark McSherry, the former Fianna Fáil TG, who's now gone independent. Of course, he's son of former Minister for Justice and EU Commissioner Ray McSherry. So interesting to see how that'll pan out. You have Marion Harkin, who's also independent there. Sinn Féin will be looking to get 2 seats there. They have Martin Kenny there. He's from Leitrim, so they're more likely to run Chris McManus, the MEP from Sligo there as well. So I would say Sinn Féin pushing for 2 there, and then the last 2 seats, it could be a any 3 from 2. Sorry, any 3 for 2 seats.
Oh, I'm amazed. How do you remember everybody? How do you remember?
It's a
How do you
struggle.
remember all everybody's names and things like that? I'm just always, yeah. If I text you anything, you straight away know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, how did you remember?
Now, I think this is North Tipperary.
Oh, gonna
Now,
be
as we said it,
interesting.
we don't mention the war. This is a new Tipperary that had decided that the constituency the population alone was big enough to sustain two individual constituencies. So we have Tip North, Tip South, both with 3-seaters. So the North Tipperary, it has gained, as I said, 13 electoral areas from northwest Kilkenny, which has gone down like a lead balloon. And they've also gained a bit from Limerick City. As I said, Burt Hill, Newport, Alan Kelly would be happy with that. Of course, North Tipperary, one man rules the roost there, and that's Michael Lowry. And so pretty confident that he will top the poll. You also have Jackie Cahill there as well. Alan Kelly, he will be under pressure, but being a 3-seat constituency, and of course, like every sitting Labour TD, they're very, very much reliant on a personal vote, because the Labour vote, if they're relying on that solely, they may as well head home. So it's going to be very, very, very tight. But
Alan
Michael
Kelly has
Lowry.
a very loyal voter, though, doesn't it?
Oh
He
yeah,
has a
yeah.
real loyal.
Getting Newport and Burt Hill back, is very, very important to him. And so yeah, I think he'll hold the seat.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. He's got a loyal voters there.
South Tipperary, Garrett O'Hearn, the Fine Gael senator from Clonmel, was very, very happy with this. Because he knew himself pretty much, I reckon, that if anything above, once he went into North Tipperary, he wasn't really going to get much, because any Fine Gael vote that would be out there now in North Tipperary is going to Michael Lowry, so he doesn't have to come. He doesn't have to deal with the Lowry machine, which is a well-oiled, well managed machine. So 3-seat constituency, Garrett O'Hearn would be hoping and pushing hard to get a seat there. You have Martin Brown of Sinn Féin, and of course you have Matty McGrath as well, the independent. So that would be my 3 if I was going to call that.
So now we're on to our neighbouring city, and that is Waterford, Paul.
Waterford, no change. Oh, there was talk that a bit of South Kilkenny, you know, from Mooncoin maybe from Ferrybank direction, that could have been brought into Waterford to make a 5-seater. Didn't happen, which I'm sure people in South Kilkenny were very, very happy about. At the moment, you currently have David Cullinan of Sinn Féin. You have Mary Butler, the Junior Minister for Mental Health and Older People. You have Matt Shanahan, the Independent, and you also have Marco Costa of the Green Party. Look, Marco Costa, Matt Shanahan would be happy that the constituency hasn't changed, but I see it's not going to be a good day for the Green Party. I reckon at the next election, I say Sinn Féin will most likely win 2 seats there, and depending on vote management strategy and if they have a good third candidate, they might be in a reckoning for 3. You don't know. Mary Butler, the junior minister, I would say she will hold her seat.
Do you think so, Paul?
I think so, baby.
Do you think so?
Yeah, she might struggle a bit, but I think she'll hold her seat. So the last seat then could be between Matt Shanahan, Independent, who else? Maybe Sinn Féin if they have their own a decent third candidate. Most likely be a female candidate if I was to take a guess, and Mary Roach of the Social Democrats. Now, it would be interesting if she pipped Matt Shanahan to the last seat, because when Matt Shanahan got elected to the Dáil, Mary Roach was co-opted as an independent into his council seat, and then she joined the Social Democrats. So that would be very, very interesting.
That'll be very interesting. So now we've moved on to County Wexford, Paul.
Wexford has been split in 2. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so North Wexford has gone in with South Wicklow to form a kind of a new constituency, which we'll see in a minute, called Wicklow Wexford, which is a 3-seater. And then the rest of Wexford, so everything from kind of Enniscorthy down to Rosslare, and there is a 4-seater. So it's going to be very, very interesting there. You have Brendan Howland, who's been a TD there for the last 36 years. Now, there are some talk he may not run at the next election.
Really?
So, yeah, George Lawler would be the most likely person to run in that case. So, in a
Would
4-seater,
Labour lose then if he doesn't run? Would Labour's vote change? Because
it,
people vote for him, don't they, Brendan Howland?
absolutely, yeah, yeah. He's a
And so
very,
therefore that would be very, very risky for Labour Party if he doesn't run.
it could be, yeah, but if Brendan Howland runs, I think he will retain
Yeah.
his seat. And then um, you have, it's kind of interesting. You have both John Brown, you have James Brown, who's kind of Enniscorthy, you have Paul Keogh, who's Enniscorthy. They're both in kind of North Wexford. So does one of them throw their hat into this new constituency? Be interesting. Well, if Paul Keogh ran there, I think you would see the likes of Rona Murphy maybe hold her seat at the Independent, and then Johnny Miden's also from Enniscorthy as well. So it's kind of it's awkward for them in a sense. They've lost votes one way and they've lost votes another. So that's to say where do they run exactly? But it's going to be interesting there.
And Paul, we're coming up to Wicklow Wexford constituency.
Wicklow Wexford, a completely new constituency,
So this is completely new.
completely new.
All right.
So,
Oh, I'm having sharing. This isn't sharing, is it? No, I thought I had it sharing. There's my little blonde Dixie moment. I thought I had it sharing. Technology's not my best.
yeah,
Anyway,
so
so this is a new constituency. So how
yeah,
do you think this is going to work, Paul?
so because of the population of both counties was kind of had increased significantly. There was talk that Wexford might be split into North and South, but that didn't happen. Wicklow, there was talk that that could have been split into North and South. So this is what the new what they've kind of decided to come up with. So you have South Wicklow, and you have North Wexford. Now it's interesting in Wicklow, the 4 of the 5 current sitting TDs are all from the north, so that's going to be an absolute bloodbath. And the only current sitting TD that is from in Wicklow, that is from South Wicklow, is Stephen Matthews of the Green Party. Now, of course, the next election for the Green Party is not going to be very, very pretty.
No.
So it'd be very interesting to see what will happen next year. Balcombe Byrne, who's from Gorey, which is it's a massive kind of town. As you know, it's grown massively in the last number of years. Commuter belt town. He would be, pushing hard to win a seat here as well. Yeah, Paul Keogh, fact that some of his base in Scorty has moved. Will he try his luck here? And again, you have the likes of Jennifer Whitmore, who's a Social Democrat TD in Wicklow, but she's from Wexford, so she might have a crack at this. I don't know. It's so until you see the runners and riders, it's very, very hard to know what way this constituency is going to go.
Going to be also interesting, Paul. It's like we got one more, and that is a Wicklow again. So let me see. I haven't got it sharing yet. I will get that up now. Bear with me. And here we go. Wicklow.
Yeah. So the north of the county that's retained as a 4-seater. So as I said, you have Stephen Donnelly, the Minister for Health. You have Simon Harris, the Minister for Higher Education. You have Johnny Brady of Sinn Féin, and you have Jennifer Whitmore. They're all based in the north of the county. Then you have Stephen Matthews in the south of the county. So it could be very, very interesting, because Sinn Féin will probably be pushing to get 2 seats, and then if they get 2 seats, then you could have a situation where it could be a shootout between Simon Harrison's Stephen Donnelly for the last 2 seats.
Oh, okay, shootout at dawn. Between Stephen Donnelly and
until
Harris.
like with them all, really, Roisin, until we know the runners and the riders, it's very, very hard. All we're doing is speculating.
And they were both two as well. When you think Simon Harris and Stephen Donnelly both have been the recent Minister of Health since 2020.
Yeah, the Angola, as Brian Cowan called it.
So that's going to be very interesting to see what is going to happen there. Paul,
that's 43 constituencies, up from 39. The number of 3-seaters has increased from 9 up to 13, which doesn't favour small parties. But look, it's like anything. If the wind is with you, it doesn't matter whether you're in a 5-seater or 3-seater.
Not the wind, Paul. The wind is the people.
Yeah,
it's the people.
If you get the vote, it doesn't matter whether it's 3, 4, 5. But it's
it's the people, Paul. But an awful lot of people now are very like, everybody is like, oh sure, who are we going to vote in? It's the same people going. There's no new faces putting their names forward. It's the same old, regardless if you put in Sinn Féin goes into government. It's the same, it's just the same people, same faces, same rhetoric.
Yeah,
and if Sinn Féin gets into government, oh Mother Hubbard, they go to the cupboard is bare. So can they deliver on the promises? Are they over promising? And really, people are quite disillusioned.
That is the biggest challenge they will face, because they're going very well in the polls. You can overpromise and underdeliver, and they won't get caught out like they did the last time. They will run more candidates to get as close as they can to an overall majority. They won't get an overall majority, I think, but they may fall short, and then when they fall short, the question
a lot
is,
of people won't be happy if they go into government.
who are they going to share government with?
They won't be happy, Paul, if they go into government with Fianna Fáil.
Mm.
People won't be happy. You know, I think that's something they need to make clear, but there's also rumors were sort of spreading over the last year with that there's a foregone conclusion that they're going into government in the next election, no matter who you vote for, that Sinn Féin's getting into government. Is that a foregone conclusion that they made when they had the mandate in 2020, but they didn't take it? And they didn't put themselves forward to go into government. So was deals done behind the closed doors of the powerful halls of Leinster House, where they said, no, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael go now, we'll take the next one. Is it, do the people matter? Does votes matter nowadays?
You certainly like to hope so, but if you crunch all the numbers of opinion polls and stuff like that, the only kind of stable combination that seems to be emerging is Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin. Now, as you said, there are people who are not going to be happy with that. But then again, look, Dick Spring said when he was leader of the Labour Party, he wouldn't go into coalition with Fianna Fáil, and he went around and did the opposite. And he came back to bite them in the end. But if they say we're not going in with him or we're not going in with them, we won't talk to them, that's all rubbish.
And back to the 2011 election, when Joe Biden said it's either Labour's way or no way, and then they went into government. Do you know? It's so I think there's going to be, I think Sinn Féin will have to really, really be very transparent with the when they're knocking the door canvassing, when people ask them, are you going to go into government? Of course they're going to say no. But they have everything all arranged. I've become very cynical, Paul. I've become so cynical of, the messaging and then the delivering. And really, is it just an all foregone conclusion?
I suppose another question that's come out of this constituency review, Roisin, is do we really need 174 TDs? An extra 14
Everyone's asking that too. Everyone I'm speaking to, I was up in Dublin on Saturday and yesterday, and everyone was saying, why do we need more TDs?
Yeah, well, if we want to change this, we could bring in a referendum. I don't really know.
More money, another referendum, more money. And it seems to be money seems to be going in opposite places from where people want the money to go. How much does a referendum cost?
Yeah, that's true. But it's kind of like we put the question to people and said, do you think we need more politicians? They'll say no. But when you put a question to them, like there was a referendum to abolish the Seanad, for example, that would have meant less politicians, but people said no, we tried to keep it. But if you ask most people, what does the Seanad do? And do you think it's of any relevance? To say no, you know what I mean? So
I think it is, because when you think about how the voting goes, when they put in legislation, the Seanad, it goes to the Seanad, then it goes to the Seanad, and then it goes to the Dáil, and then it goes back to the Seanad, and then it goes to the, so then I do think that it can slow it down, it can stall it, until there's more clarity. So before I used to think, no, we don't need it, but I think we need that air of caution. So no, the government at the time cannot rush through bills. They have to be. So I think it's a safety net.
And like you don't want to have, like in America, you have two houses that are in conflict with one another. Then, if there's a stalemate, there's total lockdown. You don't want that either. But I think
American politics is very interesting. I think it's going to be something of the future that we're going to have to talk about, Paul, and American politics, and it's really interesting. And I think it's something else I'd love us to talk about is JFK, because right down, I think he's instrumental in American politics even to this day. And he's just down the road from us. The homestead of the JFKs is in New Ross, just a couple of minutes down the road.
Town, yeah.
And you were living down there until recently, and you moved back home.
Back to sunny Kilkenny.
Yeah. Well, I think Wexford's quite sunny too, isn't that?
Ah, yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But nothing's
Nice
where the
thing.
home is where the heart is it, Paul?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Paul, so this is really interesting because you know so much that of all this in the ins and outs, and I'm always amazed just how much you really do know and how you remember everybody.
I remember I said I couldn't name the Fianna Fáil TD in Kildare North as James Lawless.
See, you always
Yeah,
do, Paul. You never forget, you know.
yeah,
But Paul, this has been really interesting, especially for me, because I know nothing about this
Mm.
part of the program and the politics. I don't know
Big,
much
the
about
big,
Irish
the big thing
politics.
to remember at the next election is the magic number that any coalition will have to hit is 87, and that's the number they need to form a government.
And if they don't reach 87, they have to go and talk to another political party or the independents or the small
Yeah,
parties.
yeah, exactly. You could have a minority government, which is not ideal because you're relying on the support of others to get your program over the line, and there's a lot of horse trading then as well, and there's having to do deals, and some of them are not always the most transparent.
I tell you, Paul, it's going to be
Yeah,
really interesting, and
yeah.
I'm always interested to hear what you have to say on because
Mm,
on everything. And yeah, I tell you, this constituency review. You were talking to me about it all summer and
mm.
said, well, nothing can be sort of finalized or everything's up in the air until this
Yeah,
constituency review
yeah.
came out.
Now they all know that all the parties and independents, they now know the lie of the land. So
So is
uh,
it now, do you think they're all in campus in election mode?
absolutely, I think that the starting whistle has been blown.
I'll tell you, Paul. And
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see who's first out of the post canvassing, knocking at doors locally.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Of course, budget's next month as well, so there's inevitable. There's lots of leaks in newspapers, and
Well, we'll have to
uh,
do something on that too, Paul. But too, I suppose like Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, they might just have a giveaway budget because they
yeah,
know that this will be their last budget, so they'll probably do something favorably to make people think,
sure.
oh, they're so popular. They did so good.
That's the plan. I would imagine.
Perfect. And then if when Sinn Féin gets into government, oh, Mother Hubbard goes to the cupboard and the cupboard is bare.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have to make a
Well,
lot of
Paul,
tax.
it's been fascinating as ever chatting to
Yeah,
you, and yeah, so really interesting information
we
because
probably went over the hour, I reckon.
well, it's yeah, I would say we definitely did, but Paul, it's not something that you can rush going through. How
No,
many
no.
constituencies now? And
We went through about well over 40 anyway. I
yeah,
know with Dublin and Cork were all on the one map, so but yeah, we had to get close to 40 anyway. As I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of these areas. They're like them all have their own little subtle nuances and stuff like that. And things can crop up and issues can crop up, closer to the time, and that could be the difference between someone being elected and somebody not. And of course, there's going to be shocks and surprises. It's inevitable, like so.
oh, roll on the next election.
Exactly.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for really going into so much detail, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as I say, watch this space.